Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We have a few cooks in the kitchen trying to get us up and running, um, technologically speaking this morning. But thanks for joining us for Talk About It Tuesday, August 27th. My goodness, already August 27th. Today we have guests in our office, which are not really guests. You guys know them very well. INdigital is here to give us a GIS update, and then we'll talk a little bit about any training and reminders, and of course, always time for questions. Again, I'm not certain that anybody here in the office really needs an introduction today, but of course, that is our contact information for anybody here at the board office. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Rachel and take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Rachel Morrison. I'm the GIS product manager for us at INdigital. I'm going to be giving kind of a high-level overview of where we're at and kind of what you need to be looking forward to as you are editing your GIS data. And then we have Amy as well. She's our database expert. She's here, and she will be, or on the call anyway, she'll be kind of tagging on at the end to talk about database, any alley information, and answer any questions. So as we get into next gen, what you are using your GIS data for currently will be changing. So when we talk about next gen and you are doing all these validations and editing and aggregating to the state data set, what it will eventually be used for is that location validation, which the location validation function will eventually replace that MSAG and alley verification, as well as call routing. So the emergency call routing function, that ECRF, will use your GIS data to determine where to send that call. So it kind of brings your data to the forefront. So currently, how you're using it in your dispatch center is mainly for dispatch functions. Other than how we are currently geo-routing with your PSAT boundary. So it puts a little more pressure on you as the GIS authority, because that data will be used outside the dispatch center to route the calls there in the first place. So it's not just in your center for just dispatch, it is also for routing. So just a little bit about the difference in kind of legacy versus next gen and where we're at. Once we are fully next gen, that again, that MSAG and alley will eventually go away, but we are in this transitional phase. So we are still falling back to tabular routing if we do, get a civic location with that location information that we get when we are trying to geo-route. If we do get a coordinate, that is when we are using your GIS data, that PSAT boundary, to route the call. And so this is just a kind of a simplified version of how your GIS data will be used in next gen. And so once we have our spatial interface stood up, none of this will change kind of your day-to-day workflow. You will still be uploading to BEP. You'll still have to aggregate to the state instance, but we will have an automated, way of retrieving that data through the spatial interface. And then we will also have the location validation function. That is where carriers will validate those records against your GIS data. So your GIS data kind of becomes the standard in which those alley records are validated against. So that all kind of happens before the call. Once the call comes into the network with that PIDA flow, which is that presence information data location object, that's what the carrier provides, that location information in the call. We use that location information to route the call to the correct PSAP, again, based on your GIS data and using that emergency call routing function. So these are just some kind of simplified steps towards the end state of geo-routing. So we are currently testing LVF to set up, those alley records and get those validated against your GIS data. And work needs to be done as far as the carriers and the location providers, kind of handing off that PIDA flow, that location information between us, the network, and the carrier themselves. And then again, your call handling systems will need to be upgraded to receive that new type of alley. And so a lot of work goes into this, as far as a core service provider, as far as, you as a GIS authority and the carriers. And so there's a lot that needs to be done. So current versus future. Again, so currently we are only using your VSAT boundaries to route those wireless calls. If we do get a civic location that again falls back to the tabular, we still are using those MSAG information that you're updating with us. And then in the future, we can use all required layers to, route any type of call. So that would be the civic, the landlines, as well as the wireless. And so currently we are getting that database information with a database div. But in the future, again, the carrier will be providing that location information with the call. And so currently, again, your GIS data is handed off between the board or data mart to us at INdigital. In the future, that will be that spatial interface, which will provision those other functional elements, which would be the LVF as well as the ECRF, and that would be, validating those locations and routing the call. So I wanted to get in a little bit about kind of our data requirements in digital versus what NINA's data requirements are. So we're using the NINA GIS data model V2, and that is what we are currently, saying that you need to follow as far as VEP when you're editing your data. And we are also looking at this data model schema, which is the Postgres SQL data model schema. And this will tell you which fields can be null, which fields can be empty. Again, those are most likely the required fields. And I wanted to get into a little bit about how we are doing some interoperability testing with Madison County and some of the things that happened with some of the data there. And so there were some fields that were null that, shouldn't have been null. And so that automatically flagged an error as we were uploading it into our database. And there were also some multi-line topology errors as well. And I just listed these are just kind of broad, general, more geometry kind of attribute table validations that we look for. And so with the multi-line topology, that there were some road center lines in there that were multi-line. And I know, Anderson, you were wanting to kind of talk about as far as exceptions in VEP.
I'll let you keep going. I'm making a run and listen.
Are you? Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to
I don't
jump
want to
in
break
there.
your flow.
Okay. So these are, as far as data requirements with us versus what, the NINA GIS data model and then CLDXF and that Postgres SQL schema, our, checks and validations are going to be more general. As far as routing goes, we are not going to know, if that address point is actually supposed to be there. We are checking for more database validations as well as, does the address point fall in that road center line segment, those kinds of things. So when we're talking about the requirements on our end, it is kind of up to you as the local GIS authority to know that your data is accurate and that it is in the, the correct location. We are more looking at the attribute fields and that multi-part geometry, say in your polygons, or the multi-line topology in your road center lines, as well as any duplicate address points, duplicate road center lines, things like that. So how can you better prepare? And these two go hand in hand. I kind of put these in any presentation I do, but communication and your resources. And so when we talk about resources, we're talking about the state board here, we're talking about data mart, we're talking about here, me, any of us at INdigital can answer your questions. But the communication has to be there. You have all these resources, but you've got to be able to use them. And then that also goes for your neighbors. And this is not just validating your boundaries line up. This is also utilizing your neighbors to see how their workflows, might be better than yours, figure out different ways to kind of utilize any other different kind of knowledge that they are using. So I just kind of wanted to harp on that a lot of work has to go into this next gen. And it's not just the GIS data, it's us at INdigital as your core service providers, the state board and Datamark. But it all kind of comes back to the GIS data. The GIS data is kind of the glue that brings all this together. It is what drives this next gen movement for call routing. So let's see. And I also wanted to say, it's not all or nothing with your GIS data. We are willing to work with whatever you have. We are also in the process of, building these things and developing these functional elements. So we are willing to test with any good data that is available. And again, that will come from Anderson and the board kind of determining with Datamark which kind of data sets we would like to test with. But I will say, you do not have to get everything completely prepared and ready and next gen compliant. We're, willing to work with you and go from there.
Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good is what I heard her just say.
Yes.
So we can start probably almost anywhere, uncover some of the most impactful issues and go from there. I also want to add tack in to something you said specifically with this slide, and nobody's in this alone.
Yeah.
Everybody has sort of a role that they have to play, and not to bore anybody with details, but just last month, the FCC unanimously approved a report and order that impacts everything that we do, especially us as a 911 authority that provides an EZNet to the state. We now have sort of a mandate upon all of us to hold carriers accountable, call handling solution providers accountable, EZNet providers accountable, ourselves accountable for the GIS data that we're utilizing. We're in a truly in a kind of the next step to cross over the hump of transition and hopefully be on the downhill slide in a good way on the other side. So I say all that to kind of bring that together, is that this is sort of a all hands on deck, and that's how we have to approach this. And nobody's alone in that. So
for those fans of Righteous Gemstones and Baby Billy, when he sings the sermon, there will come a day now, that day's coming. That day is coming.
In fact, I think it's here.
It's here.
Yeah.
I've got a list of things out of that, Rachel, that might address a lot of questions, but I know Amy had some prepared statements, and let's see if she kind of speaks to some of those, and then I'll go last.
Okay. Yeah, Amy, we're ready for you whenever you are.
All right, can you hear me?
Oh, there she is.
Is my audio on? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
It is.
Okay, great. I didn't want to start and go off on a big thing. All right. So as was said, we're testing with the LVF right now. And some of what we've discovered as a part of that is, the containers that the data is handed to us, we need to agree on what those containers are. And that's why Rachel showed the slide about the Postgres database and the NINA standards. That's defining the container for the data so that you can prepare it and we can receive it and we can put it into production or, into our test database. So that's really important. I think another factor to think about in this whole process is we're trying to represent the real world in data. And what we're doing is moving toward greater and greater accuracy. Our tabular routing that we do right now is based on the MSAG, which is basically ranges of streets. As we move into the future, the road center line is getting more precise about those ranges. But with GIS, we're also adding the site structure address point layer, which is even more precise. And just as a note of what's coming up in the future, the NINA standards people are working on 3-dimensional GIS data, which could be really important. You know, say you have a caller and they plot on a bridge. Well, are they actually on the bridge or are they under the bridge? And that might make a big difference if it's not an interchange, if it's a bridge over some interstate, it might really make a huge difference on how the responders are going to get to that person who's requesting help. So that's part of, you know, even greater accuracy that we're doing. And then back to Leah's point that it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as we get our containers fixed up, you know, and agreed on, which I think we're a long ways toward doing. What happens if there's a missing site structure address point? Well, we'll either fall back to the road center line or we'll just say not found. And we'll do what we do today. In Alabama, I think you guys have a round robin set of a small list of PSAPs that take calls when, you know, there's no way to know where to send that call. If there's no information for sending that call, it will get delivered to a 911 center, but it will be, you know, one of these default PSAPs. The same would be true if we have data missing in the future, you know, and maybe, you know, you've got most of it there, but if you're missing a few and it just happens to get a call from one of that missing pieces, there is a fallback and it will get answered. What if that data is there, but the latitude and longitude is incorrect? Well, it'll get delivered to possibly a different PSAP, possibly the responders that are associated with that different geolocation, you know, are not what's really correct for the person calling, but it'll still get through. And those are things that we will detect as we go along and be, you know, obviously continuing to improve the data. But again, you know, we need to make us, or you will need to be making a choice. When is it appropriate to move forward, even given the imperfections? And let's not worry about being perfect. Let's worry about moving forward. I wanted to make a mention too, in those fields, in the new GIS road center line and site structure address point, there's both the old and the new systems. Until everybody is fully in that nirvana stage of next generation, we need the legacy fields. But then we also need, what's coming up is the CLDXF fields. And that's just a way of dividing up the street name into more components. So our legacy MSAG, the street name itself, we've got 4 fields: prefix directional, street name, street suffix, post directional. The CLDXF divides that same thing into 8. We need both for the transition because we will be looking at your data to when we work with either a PSAP or a carrier who's not next gen. And so we will need to use your GIS data, the values in those fields, to make that translation between legacy and next gen for the duration until everybody is brought up to speed. So I just wanted to bring that up, that you can make some assumptions and do the translation one direction pretty easily, but the other direction, moving into CLDXF, you have to make a lot of assumptions. And that's, you know, software doesn't do well with assumptions if they're not rock solid. I also wanted to just mention in the I3 document, if you're looking for just more information about the fields, Appendix B in the standards I3 document can be helpful for some examples of what needs to be what. Obviously, the CLDXF document has some good information. And for those who really like to get techie, there's an LVF informational document from NINA that is very interesting to read too, in terms of how the data is used and some considerations in terms of making sure that different LVF would treat the same GIS data in the same way. But I think the document also points out the control you have as the GIS provider in terms of how accurate, how precise your data needs to be to become validated. That's all I had to share today.
Thanks, Amy. Anderson, do you?
Yeah, I'll try to head off some questions that might have arisen from that, and to sort of talk about the things that we're doing in partnership with INdigital and Datamark at the state office. The one thing that probably freaked a lot of people out that were paying attention is NINA V2. No worries there. Your data, as it's translated through the VEP upload, aggregate, validate process, consumes your native schema as it is, or as it was onboarded into VEP, converts it to NINA data model V1. And then there is an output for V2. So if you're not familiar with the download process, you can currently download your data into V2 out of the box. And we will, per INdigital's guidelines, be passing them the converted native schema to V1 to V2 along the way. So that handles a lot of what I think Amy and both Rachel addressed with fixing the containers. I heard Amy say, which is I like it. It's pretty good. I might steal that.
Feel free.
So that work is done for you on the front side. There's been a lot of concern about populating the domain fields that are required for this process that we have not, as of yet, been able to give you a value for. I would tell you that's coming quickly. We have applied for those domains through the FCC. Adam's off camera. Is that right, Adam? I got a thumbs up. So we hope to have those values to you shortly.
If they approve that domain, otherwise we'll go a different route and provide another domain for the.
What do you say? We have delivered test data to INdigital. Rachel made mention of that. One of the things we've discovered in that process is if you mark exceptions to data that is critical to the functionality that Rachel outlined, and it passes to the state aggregated data set, it's still there. You've marked in an exception, that exception has disappeared in your reporting and in your VEP instance. You don't get that back when you download the markups, but it's still there because it hasn't been resolved. And we are working with INdigital to outline certain fields and validations that can't have those exceptions in them. She mentioned multi-part feature as one of them. That's not a really robust markup as an exception, but we see it making it through. We don't know. We don't have solid guidelines on what that is yet because we're still in the data testing phase. But I would tell you more to come on that as we move through the testing phase. I outlined the INdigital requirements. I've presented on this a couple of times now, but rehash it for those that already know, but potentially new ears on the call. INdigital in the build up to the testing phase outline requirements that the GIS data had to look like X, Y, and Z to even make it into the test data set for functionality. We have taken that, handed that to Datamark and said, all right, Datamark, what validations correspond with these minimum data requirements? And I can provide you that validation list. All you need to do is email me or call me and I can send it to you. But I believe there were 16 validations. I might be wrong on that. Might be misremembering, but they apply to the road center lines, the address points, and then there's a separate set of validations that apply to the MSAG and alley synchronization with your GIS road center lines and address points. All that to say, we have guidelines and an outline to, for lack of a better term, test your GIS data to see if it meets the minimum data requirements in INdigital's outline, the ECRF, LVF, SI, all the fun next-gen 911 acronyms. After we ran our initial report on that, it became apparent to us that we had some deficiencies in the statewide GIS data set. 83 of 85 districts did not meet those minimum data requirements. That's not to say a lot of them weren't close. They were, but just out of the box, only 2 districts met those minimum data requirements. So we knew we had a problem. And so in the July board meeting, the board approved a statewide data remediation project in partnership with INdigital and Datamark to offer assistance to all 85 districts, should they choose to accept it, to take your data and edit it to meet the minimum data requirements for INdigital, to take that heavy lift out of your burden and put it on the board staff and the DataMark remediation team. We have kicked that project off. We have started the first group of districts have been engaged. Have had their kickoff meetings. We are in what DataMark calls Gap 1 remediation currently, and coming to a district near you. Please be on the lookout as we roll projects off. We'll start new projects, and just wherever your district falls on the list, we'll be reaching out to you well in advance of the start of that project to inform you again of what the project is, expectations and needs out of you, the district, and what DataMark will be doing for you individually. Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. Oh, and when do we hope to have this done, Anderson?
It will be done before December 31st, 2025. And that's going to require participation from you. If you choose to accept this project, again, this is offered at no cost to you. You'll get a dedicated DataMark project manager, a dedicated GIS lead, and a dedicated GIS technician. That their job is to remediate your project, your GIS data in a timely manner. But that will also require district verification. They will reach out as part of this project and say, hey, we see this right here. We need you to clarify what's going on here, and we'll need you to do that in a timely manner. You also don't need to accept the help. If you've got in-house GIS resources that are doing a fine job and you love working with them, they're your employee, they're your third-party vendor, that's awesome. We still need that data done by December 31st, 2025. And obviously that's a long runway. But as Leah pointed out, it's already football season, y'all. So Christmas is going to be here around the corner, and then all of a sudden it's going to be December 31st, 2025. So we have an outline to complete this project by that time, and just you'll hear me talk about this every time you see me talk. I'll be reminding folks of what we're doing.
And to bring this full circle, like Rachel opened her presentation with, is that same data that you see in front of you, maybe in your CAD system or other systems there within your center, is also the same data being used on the front end to route your call. So this is one data set utilized in multiple stops along the way. So just think about it in that respect of that. It comes full circle. It starts maybe potentially the public safety event, and then up to the disposition of that event as well.
I said this at a director's meeting. This project is meant to remediate your GIS data, edit your GIS data to INdigital's minimum requirements, not the complete I3 standard. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of GIS and it's going to be out there. So if you think this is going to get you to not see my ugly mug, unfortunately, you're sorely mistaken. I'll still be out there harassing you about your GIS data.
Before we get to questions, actually, before we get to deadlines and reminders, we're going to go ahead and switch to questions at this point. And as Anderson said, Adam's off camera and doesn't have a mic, but he's very dependable and has sent me at least one of the questions that we have on. And I think this is I'm excited about this question, but it gives all of us something to think about and a future to look forward to. But Philip from Alabama DOT has asked, could this transfer of information be available to external groups such as ALDOT, not the personal information, but location and type of crash, injury, fatality, all of that sort of thing. So in a perfect world, I'd love to say, yes, we can get there. What we're talking about now currently, and I think this is what leads to that whole public safety event being handled properly, is we're talking about the call data, not the personal private information of necessarily of the caller, but the location and the information that comes with the call. And we need to marry that with, in my mind, what is CAD data? Like, what is the actual event categorized as? And that marriage then is the appropriate combination of information to share with external entities. And that's why we push relationships with your local DOT offices or your traffic incident management centers, and like all of those types of things, is because we've got to figure out how to get that siloed data into an appropriate amount of data that's consumable and to the right people for the right response. Because we know that if we get that response right on the front end, it saves lives, it saves times, it saves secondary crashes. It's a real life and property saver, not to mention time saver. So I would say eventually I'd love to see that. There's another pretty significant component in there being the computer aided dispatch information that we need to marry with the call or the caller information to make that complete.
So I thought as part of the sort of the way that this statewide remediation project is going to go, I'll give you a call, offer you the opportunity to take advantage of this. We'll have a kickoff meeting. After the kickoff meeting, I'll send you a project agreement. It'll outline the expectations and deliverables of DataMart, the expectations and deliverables of board staff, myself and Nita, and then also expectations of the district. And one of those outlined expectations is that you will agree to accept the remediated data back into your production GIS database, which by extension should be your CAD GIS database. The goal of this is to get your working GIS database in sync with both what is in VEP as well as the INdigital minimum data requirements, so that as you edit your data, add road center lines and all the things, you are not uploading bad data, you are uploading the remediated data that constantly it will meet the minimum data requirements. Rachel spoke to the SI and provisioning data to INdigital. Again, the methodology that we approach to passing the data to INdigital is VEP: upload, validate, aggregate, and that sends it to the state database, which then gets provisioned to INdigital's SI.
No other questions at this point? All right, anybody in the gallery, you can unmute yourself and give it a go. We know you guys aren't shy, so.
Um,
32 of y'all out there. I know somebody's got a question.
Yep. Even if it's what's this box right here. I mean, we do have a prize provided by INdigital to give away. Okay. Well, I'm shocked. I thought there'd be.
I was the same thing.
Yeah.
Me too. Honestly.
You've done an excellent job. of
That,
explaining
maybe
it.
yeah,
so.
that means. That's what that means. I'll just say at this point, if it's not clear to you, we've come a long way. As a state, we're in a position to be able to take this next step. We still have a long way to go. But this is, in Anderson's words, as far as nerding out, this is very exciting to us. We get to actually innovate with some of our industry partners, which is something that hasn't always been the case in our profession. We get to know you guys out in the local districts and the local jurisdictions, and then we get to make this service that we provide that no one can provide all on its own better for those that we serve. So I say all that to say I think this is pretty exciting and keeps us busy. So.
And what it really does is it puts all districts on an equitable footing on a base GIS data readiness. They're sort of, I understand there are business workflows that districts need, and it won't impact that. I know there's a lot of concern out there about how do I continue to add addresses and road center lines. We've got a plan in place, and each project is tailor-made to the district's current workflows and data needs. So I've had some concern about that, and any concerns you have that would the opportunity to voice those would be in the kickoff meeting, so that DataMart can really get an idea of what your business needs are.
And one of the things that I would say too is up until this point, this has all been theoretical, right? This has just been some standard that somebody wrote and then, this is where we'd like to go to eventually. Like we gotta go this direction eventually. And so, I and kind of thinking about, okay, how do we at INdigital best support this? Well, we need a practical example and a project to work through in order to test call flow and then also the data that comes along with that call. Because I just don't think that talking around in a circle about something really produces any results or gives any actionable items. And so, and I said this in a couple of different things I've presented at here recently with Huntsville, Madison County 911. We have undergone this project to test call handling systems to the I3 standard. Well, part of that standard, as I said previously, is the ability to be able to pass location information with that call. Well, you have to have a data set in order to be able to pass location information. And so we had Madison County's data set and 2 or 3 other data sets too, that we are using a part of that testing. And we found out things that otherwise we would not have known. And really, that's just kind of, 2 parts to that. One of the reasons is because previously there was no hard deadline for production quality data to be able to be delivered to somebody sitting at a PSAP. So generally, if you're not working against a date, you don't get anything done. And then the second thing is because we had not been to a point with the state program and the GIS program, but where there was a data set to be able to hand over. And so I'm very interested to see how the remainder of the call testing goes in Huntsville, Madison. We should be finished with that in the next 2 weeks. And I want to specifically say thanks to Chris and Ernie. They came to me with this project 6 months ago and wanted to test out cloud-based call handling. And we've just used this to do multiple different types of tests, not just the call handling side. And so it really is an exciting time to be a part of this. But there's things that we've all learned and we will continue to learn. And I'm just, I'm thrilled with the progress so far. And so not to take up too much time, but when I think of, about practical uses, Alabama is well on the road to a practical use for this and not just talking about it for another 10 years, like many other states are doing. So.
We're not gonna name names.
Who I'm not naming. I've been some of it. So.
No. Also, I hear a little bit of concern in some people's comments and commentary. Yeah, us too. I mean, we don't have all the answers. There's no real easy button here. But we're learning on the job and as we go. So I think in this scenario specifically, you utilize the expertise that's available to you on your kickoff call when you have it with Datamark. And I cannot reiterate enough what Rachel said is you have a wealth of resources available to you. Ask the question. I mean, there's no question that shouldn't be asked. And we're walking through this together. So anything else before we move forward?
Mike, Annie, you want to be put on the spot? You don't have to. Annie Cahill, for those that don't know who Annie Cahill is, you need to get to know Annie. Also, she is our state customer success manager, I believe is what she's called, but she's also outstanding human being. And really is an expert in the field. And did I hear you speak?
Yep.
She said hi.
Okay. So this, I don't want to, I might be stealing a little thunder in the next slide. I say that for those that haven't met Annie, she will be at the Gulf Coast Conference and we will be, I might be stealing the thunder now.
No, I don't think so.
Slides aren't that deep.
Okay,
Yeah.
we for those that came to our user conference, we set up a sort of an all-day shop. We called it the doctor's office for open invitation to come sit in a room with
I think I'm gonna set up the psychologist office.
board staff and Datamark staff. I believe Laura will be in there with education and outreach. It's your chance to sort of corner us and speak to your ills about GIS.
And anything else.
And anything else.
Yeah, anything else. We thank you, Chad, for securing us a space. We just learned about this a couple of days ago, and we'll be advertising that, come talk to us if you have questions about the ABC 911 board app. We're so excited because there's dozens of you that have logged on since Daniel and Laura did the Talk About It Tuesday 2 weeks ago, and making your changes within the application. And we're excited about it. Y'all seem to be excited about it. Daniel went through a list of quality of life changes and improvements he's been making based on your feedback. So that full unveiling for the whole user group within 911 will be Gulf Coast Conference. So we're very excited for all the information that you will be able to access there regarding education and outreach, certification, contact information, statistical information, you know, hey, I met this person at this place and I can't remember their last name. I need their email address, those sorts of things. So we're very excited to be able to share all of that information. So shameless plug, come to our sessions at Gulf Coast Conference, register for the Gulf Coast Conference, plan to attend, and then you will have, you know, at least half a day or more of our undivided attention if you want to talk with us about anything or everything. These deadlines and reminders that are on the screen in front of you are our usual. If you're hiring and want us to advertise on your behalf, if you're training and you want us to advertise on your behalf, look us up. Let us know, send us the flyer, all of those types of things. I think Anderson covered the upload, validate, and aggregate. But just to let you all know, we're working towards trying to streamline several processes in our office. We still have our our reimbursement programs available. So our cost, 911 legacy cost reimbursement program still available, and our public safety telecommunicator certification reimbursement program is available. So keep those requests coming. I just set up all those payments yesterday, I believe. So they go out at the end of the month. So those should be in your bank accounts by Friday, I believe. With that, I think we're obviously here to answer questions, but I think we'll do a prize drawing.
Do we have the little wheel from the user conference? Can I spin the wheel? Yes. That was my favorite part of the user conference, spinning the wheel.
Anybody wanna?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think
Oh.
Rachel's.
Tell us about it.
Okay.
Come on, Vanna
Oh,
White.
No,
Tell us.
that's
Yeah.
you.
This
Yeah.
this is brand new from Arctic, which is where we get all of our coolers. This is I don't remember the name of it, but it's a personal cooler. Great for taking your lunch to work or taking a cold one to the beach or wherever you decide to go. So it is branded by INdigital. This one comes in Arctic gray. And it's available today.
Available today.
Well, you're one of the best Barker Judy's I've ever seen.
Yeah. Diversity, man. Good on. So.
All right, here we go. Oh, we got sound effects and everything.
It's kind of
I think they go.
Fireworks teacher.
Oh, Monroe County. Well, you all will have to fight over it if there's more than one of you, but we'll have that sent your way. So congratulations and thank you very much for INdigital for providing that. And before we say farewell, one final ask of anybody. She's excited. All right. We assume so, but we shouldn't do that. Thanks, Nikki. All right. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank y'all.
Yes.